Good evening and welcome to Chicago Newsroom 2.0. I'm your host, Andy Zopp. In tonight's roundtable, we'll take another look at the continuing crisis that is youth-involved violence in Chicago, specifically what the media is getting right and wrong in its continuing coverage. But first, I'll sit one-on-one with America Scores Chicago Executive Director Kevin Triskett to discuss what his organization is doing to actively support Chicago youth. We'll get started on the other side of this short break. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Kimberly Loftus. On the next edition of In the Money, we'll discuss how you can build a solid financial base with my guest, Tani Fair, and licensed clinical social worker, Tamika Hill.
Discipline works better for me. I have to have someone telling me to do it or some type of accountability.
Join the conversation Thursday at 7 p.m. on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
Since 2000, America Scores Chicago has been building the confidence and character of youth to succeed on the field, in the classroom, and in life. Joining me tonight to share more about the organization's intentional work in support of Chicago's youth is America Scores Chicago Executive Director, Kevin Triskett. Welcome to the newsroom, Kevin.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me today.
Nice to see you.
You too.
Tell us a little bit about what is America Scores? What do you do? What's your mission? And what's the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so America Scores Chicago is cultivating a generation of poet athletes. Since 2000, we've provided high-quality, high-dosage, out-of-school time opportunities to Chicago youth that combine soccer, poetry, and service learning in order to help students be engaged in the classroom, lead healthy lives, and have the confidence and character to affect their community in the classroom and in the world around them. Wow,
that's terrific. I have to tell you, you don't usually hear the words soccer, poetry in the same kind of this is our work. How do those two things come together, and why poetry?
Yeah, so it's a unique blend of different activities that combine a lot of the same elements. So in soccer, not only are the kids actively engaged in a healthy activity and learning the same type of teamwork and commitment and communication that requires you to succeed both in the classroom and on the field, but you need collaboration, you need creativity, and you need teamwork. And it's the same as true as with writing. When you're writing poetry, you need to be creative, you need to be intellectual, you need to be authentic, but you also need a team of editors, a team of folks who will listen to you as your audience. And when you combine those really powerful elements together, which are two things that students aren't getting enough of in school as well, then it's really activating our students, engaging them in their minds and in their intellect, in their bodies and in their healthy eating habits and in their physical activity, and really helping to create an individual voice that they can use to express themselves freely and openly to help make a difference.
And where in Chicago does your program serve? Where are the students located?
Sure. So we have about 1,500 students that we reach annually. All of our students are Chicago Public School students, grades K through 8, and we operate primarily on the south and east sides of Chicago. So our heaviest and most populous areas, Little Village, Pilsen, we're in North Lawndale as well, but really on the south and west sides of the city right now.
And how many schools are you in then?
We're in 20 students, give or take, annually.
20 schools? Wow. Mm-hmm. Terrific. And how is this? It's America Scores Chicago. Is this a national organization or is this just a Chicago-based?
Yeah, America Scores is an international affiliate organization with affiliates in the United States across the Midwest, in Milwaukee, St. Louis, Cleveland, Chicago, and on both coasts, in the Bay Area in Los Angeles, up in Seattle, we're over in Boston, New York, and in Vancouver, Canada as well. And within the next year or two, there will be 2 new affiliates launching in Toronto, Canada, and Miami, Florida.
Wow. And you said you serve a lot of students in communities that are heavily Hispanic. I assume that you have dual language instructors and who are able to communicate well with these students?
Yeah, we're really proud that top down through our organization, from the board to our staff to the coaches and the students, we really try to reflect the communities that we're aiming to serve and help improve. We believe that community voice is really strong and important. That's why we're proud to have a partnership with CAN TV. And we do definitely try to accommodate students and meet them where they are.
Wow, so exciting. So how do the students get enrolled? Do they choose to get enrolled? automatically enroll? Do their parents pick the program? I'm still a little stuck on like when I was in between second and eighth grade going, what I really want to do is write some poetry.
Yeah. Well, we make it fun, of course, and we can talk some more about that. But students do selectively enroll. We have staff, both program staff and office-based staff, who go out to schools and actively recruit students to participate in the program and school community members to participate as coaches to also help actively recruit students.
And so tell me how these programs, in your view, really help students grow. You talked about it at kind of a high level, but let's talk about it a little more specifically. So for an individual student, what are they getting out of this program on an individual level?
Yeah, so a lot of students who participate in after-school programming are really, in sort of a daycare option, right? Roll out the ball in the gym, play around for a little bit. We provide a refined, validated curriculum that teaches the best practices in soccer for youth based on their age range, and have an instructional grid for our writing exercises. So our coaches are trained to implement the program to fidelity. They go into the classroom with specific resources that are really focused on helping activate the students to teach them lessons about healthy eating, to teach them not just how to play soccer, but how to really engage in a physical lifestyle, and also how to improve their writing skills, reading, writing, and then we activate that through a community service project in the fall. So what students are getting when they come to the program is not just an opportunity to play, but a structured opportunity to learn a new sport, engage with teammates, to learn writing and self-expression, to find their voice, and then to activate it in their community. And we have validated results through surveys that we collect and through longitudinal data we collect from Chicago public schools as well, that shows that students, especially those who stay in the program for longer periods of time, have stronger social emotional indicating scores, like stronger peer-to-peer bonds, stronger peer-to-mentor bonds. They also show improved writing and sometimes even math scores as well from participating in our program.
Wow. So, it seems to me like I know the answer to this question, so this is going to seem like a silly question, but I think it's important because not necessarily everybody might not get it. Why? Why is this important? Why is this work so important, and why are you doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. The needs for this type of work are very strong, right? Students need opportunities after schools to be actively engaged, not just as a mechanism to keep them off the streets or anything like that, but because so much of school is dedicated to learning very specific curriculum on which students are tested, year over year. We need an opportunity to create freedom of expression for students. We need an opportunity to engage them and teach them things about how to find and assess healthy nutritional snack options, how to write and keep a journal, how to be confident to give a public presentation, and how to find and identify areas within their school communities, their home lives, or their communities where they can really drive improvement. We serve schools that are unfortunately under-resourced in ways that they can't provide access to free sports like America Scores Chicago can. They can't provide opportunities for creative writing over the course of a year with a dedicated coach like America Scores Chicago can. And they very rarely turn the students outward facing to the community and ask them to address a problem that they see.
Right. Wow, terrific. Tell me a story about one of your students or participants that's really moved you since you've been there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we had a student perform last year at our Red Carpet Poetry Slam. So our students participate in writing workshops and soccer workshops all through the fall, and then a select handful are chosen for a big programmatic event where we feature just student performances. And last year we had a student named Diego who had originally written a poem that was kind of a funny, jokey poem. And then when we selected him for the Red Carpet Poetry Slam, he wanted to change his poem. And what he wanted to really focus on and write about was community violence and how it was affecting him as a developing student. And he gave a really powerful poetry performance at a Red Carpet Poetry Slam that literally brought our audience to tears. Wow. And it was really moving to see not just, a middle school boy deliver a poem, but to really tap into an emotional, vulnerable state and express something about how he wanted to shape his world. It was really powerful to see.
Wow, it sounds like it. Amazing. Well, it's really important work that you're doing. I know you've got a Red Carpet Slam coming up eventually. How do people find out more about America Scores Chicago?
Yeah, absolutely. On Thursday, March 21st, we're hosting our Red Carpet Poetry Slam at the Harold Washington Library. Tickets are available, and to learn more about that event and the programmatic work we do throughout the city, folks can visit www.chicagoscores.org.
All right, terrific. Kevin, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you're doing at America Scores Chicago. It's terrific.
I appreciate it.
We will be right back with this week's Roundtable.
This week on Change Agents, we will meet some leaders who are dedicated to meet the holistic needs of Chicago's refugees.
Regardless of how you fall on the issue of immigration, right, the need is still within our own community. It's in our own backyard.
Join me Thursday at 7:30 p.m. on CanTV 19. Stream us live on cantv.org or watch us on the CanTV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
Youth-involved violence in Chicago remains a critical challenge for the city that continues to deliver devastating and tragic stories of young lives lost. We were once again reminded of this painful reality when a Chicago Public Schools student was killed and 2 others wounded in late January in what police believe was a targeted attack just blocks from their North Side school. It was the second fatal shooting of CPS students in less than a week, coming after 2 boys were gunned down near their Loop charter school. Mayor Brandon Johnson joined CPD Superintendent Larry Snelling at a news conference near the scene, advising that the city would be offering counseling service to students and victims' families. For his part, Superintendent Snelling said there would be police present at all schools across the city at the time of arrival and during dismissal. To discuss it all, I'm joined at the roundtable by Jamie Nesbitt Golden, reporter for Block Club Chicago and the host of CanTV original program 3 Questions with Hugo Balta. Welcome back, Hugo and Jamie. Nice to have you. Thank you for coming here to talk about this topic that is just so hard. I think to have 3 students killed within a week of each other, right outside, basically outside their schools. Is this the new norm for us, or is this unusual? What are you guys seeing and thinking, Jamie?
Well, I wouldn't say it's unusual because as a former CPS student, I have been around for school shootings. I will say, though, that the approach to having SRO people or police officers on school grounds doesn't really help the situation. Right. I think there has to be. I think the alternative solution being introduced in that having social workers on campus, having wraparound services for students who are experiencing this kind of violence is more helpful. When you're talking to these kids, they are anxious when they see police officers on site.
You know, I think some people would say if the police around, maybe people will be less likely to, target people in the, within blocks of the school, but it doesn't mean they won't target them, right? So.
Right. I do think I have a child. My son's a senior at Westinghouse in West Garfield, and yes, unfortunately, violence is part of the norm. Although I will say communication with parents is paramount. And when there are situations, the school does a good job of informing us of the situations. As far as having police in schools, it's a double-edged sword. And on one hand, you want that type of authority, that type of presence, if anything, to have a peace of mind, at least from the parent's perspective. But we also need to understand the relationship or lack thereof between police and the community, including students. And we don't want to create a situation because there is no relationship in many situations that becomes antagonistic. So I do think like in all social problems, it's a multi-pronged approach that needs to be put to the table and not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, so I'm going to piece through this a little bit. So let's talk about, Snelling's actually talking about, we're going to get to officers in school. He was talking about kind of like it's not quite as having the car there with the lights running in downtown that our last superintendent wanted, but he's really talking about literally having cars kind of around the blocks is what I heard, right, as a disruptor. And I think I just think that's a short term, it might be a short term fix. But let's talk about police in schools, because the school board is talking about terminating that or has, I can't remember if they actually did it or they're still just talking about terminating the contract with CPD. And there's been a lot of pushback from some schools saying, because in some schools, those police officers who are there have been there a while. They have relationships with the students. They're listening to what's happening, and they have been disruptive. And there's been push to have it be decided by the local school councils, where it feels, where they can decide whether this is a additive for our students or more of a, just have the police there to arrest kids when they make mistakes. I don't know. What do you think?
I think we have to look at the responses and then evaluate what are the insights to those responses. What's the evidence of it working and not working? Because there's a lot to learn if it's not working. And what are the limitations? Too often, it's a forced one-size-fits-all, and that approach is more about politics and who has the megaphone, as opposed to really taking a look at what is necessary. And again, it varies from neighborhood to neighborhood and school to school. So to say this is one overarching solution, I think really does not take into consideration that the devil's in the details.
Right. Jamie?
When I covered some of the LSC meetings a few years back, again, like Hugo says, it's sort of a case-by-case basis. Simeon's LSC voted to keep their SROs. I think Kenwood and Hyde Park did as well. Other schools have decided against it. And I think, as Hugo says, like the one-size-fits-all solution doesn't really help matters. And if, particular SROs at these schools have a pre-existing relationship with these students, and that's great. But if we're just throwing officers in there who are coming with their own set of biases,
sure.
That could, be quite dangerous.
Right, exactly. I think it creates an issue. But I think absolutely there's a strong argument for letting it be a local-based argument or a decision. And I think, for an administration that is talking about and understands the need to really engage parents and schools. It's the whole premise behind elected school board. The idea that you wouldn't let that school community make some critical decisions about how they want to protect or provide for security for their students seems kind of counterintuitive to me.
And I think you make a really solid point in that there has to be communication between schools and parents and the community. Like so many times, a lot of folks are being left in the dark about what's happening on these school campuses, and you don't know until after the fact. And again, without that, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things happening once this school board's assembled, I'll just say.
And the youth violence isn't exclusively at schools. It doesn't begin or end at schools.
Exactly.
So the approach needs to also look at what's happening outside of the schools, in the homes, in the neighborhoods. A lot of times, especially when the summer starts, there's an increase of violence because school's out. Mm-hmm. And then where are we seeing some of this violence happening downtown? So you have to, again, take a step back. It's a multi-pronged approach. A lot of it has to do with disinvestment in certain neighborhoods. So what are you providing youth from an education standpoint, from a workforce standpoint? What are you providing families, being inclusive of parents, in order to chip away at youth violence from a perspective of law enforcement to a perspective of education, working, and a lot of mental wellness as well.
Right. So speaking of kind of a plan, an inclusive plan, we've heard kind of two big approaches recently. One is the mayor's plan. He announced his people's plan for community safety. And then the other, of course, is the civic committee, commercial club civic committee, and Arnie Duncan and large philanthropy organizations coming together to talk about ways to address violence. So, two big effort, the mayor's plan and then this in partnership to public-private partnership. How are you guys, what are you seeing in terms of how you're covering it and how people are responding? I've heard a number of comments that the mayor's plan isn't really that different from what's been said before. Not that that's a bad thing, but
and I think, sort of, there are good parts to this, but again, I think community input is essential, and the mayor will have to sort of be patient with folks who are, have been fed up with the level of violence here. That said, sort of leaning on violence prevention specialists who have been in these neighborhoods working with these kids. They know them by name. They've either coached them on the basketball team or, helped their families with something. I think sort of leaning on those pre-existing relationships would be helpful.
Yeah. And I think both plans draw from the work that has been put in place from previous administrations. I think absolutely you need to have the support, not just politically, but also philanthropically. I also think that we don't, we talked off camera, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Right. It might feel like youth violence is unique to Chicago, but there are comparable cities, markets that also have those same challenges. What are some of those responses, not ideas, responses that have been enacted that our leaders could take a look at and say, well, wait a minute, maybe there's something there that we can draw from as we are making our proposals. You don't have to start from zero, and you should really look not just within the city, but outside of the city, the state, in regards to looking for those solutions.
I would also add that there's a tendency to, in the case of ceasefire, there have been organizations that have actually been successful in reducing violence and have been funded to a certain point only to have that funding snatched away. I also believe that there are folks, that might, feel as though, these violence prevention organizations are, somehow sabotaging the efforts of CPD. I think sort of getting the police on board with the idea that this is, again, a all hands on deck situation would be important to sort of get or galvanize people behind this idea.
And when you look at those limitations, it's usually all drawn up by getting political points. So everybody's all in when they have an investment during an election year or other biases or whatever is drawing them to make those proposals. What's left out is the long-term plans, not these Band-Aids that really invest in improving the situations for this generation and the ones to come.
Right. Well, I would say two things. I totally agree with you. I think one thing that I thought was important about the announcement that Arnie Duncan and the community and civic group did was two things. One, first of all, Lieutenant Snelling was there, right, and very engaged, and he's been very vocal about supporting community-based violence intervention. So I think that was important. The other thing is they committed a lot of money. This is the thing people don't appreciate. It costs money. It costs money not just to have violence intervention, but the violence intervention, part of it is intervening and stopping the violence. The second part is what do you do after with the people who have been engaging in the violence or are most likely? If you're going to turn it around, you have to make some investments. Arnie's been talking about this problem and about the cost for a while. So I think, what do you think about the need for investment and the support from the civic and community groups around making the investment?
And that's on us as journalists, right? We need to do a better job of not just covering the story when these announcements are made, when ground is broken, but follow the money, right? Where is the money going? And going back to the story and holding the powerful accountable of where those dollars are being invested. Everybody shows up when there are political points to be gained, and then everybody disappears when they've gotten their political collateral. It is on us to ensure, in working with the community, that we adhere to where's the money coming from, where is it going, and everything is in steps. This is what's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 in regard to solving this particular problem.
Jamie, you agree?
I do. I think Hugo said it perfectly. Again, journalists have to do their due diligence in making sure that folks are doing what they have promised to do. And oftentimes, we are so caught up in sort of getting the soundbite or getting like a really cute quote or quip that we're not looking at the entire picture. So yes, we have to hold the powerful accountable, and we also have to do our own homework in making sure that this money is going where it's supposed to go.
Right. I think also talking two points. One, to your point about holding people accountable, that what they announce is it's $400 million is what we need. Mm-hmm. We have 60. Right? Okay? That's a big gap, right? We have 60. Like, that's great, but that's, you need another 340. So I think to your point, holding people accountable to make sure those investments come, but then also telling the stories, right, of the people who are doing the work, right, of the people who have been successful, because we only hear the stories of when they fail. When a violence interrupter, commits a crime, or, somebody drops out of a program. I think we need to do a better job of telling the stories of the work and how hard it is and the success.
And ask the right questions,
right.
Because we show up for when we get the press release for the announcement, and we're not asking the right questions at the beginning and in the end. You're right. Mm-hmm. We're there when this didn't work. Well, why didn't it work? Right. What were the limitations that prevented what seemed 3 years ago as this is going to be that silver bullet? Why didn't it work? It's because we're showing up at the beginning and at the end and not in the in-between. Right. It is on us to follow this story from beginning to end. But that takes resources, and it takes a newsroom editorial focus and willingness to do that.
Right, exactly.
I've had the pleasure of sort of doing ride-alongs with certain organizations that specialize in de-escalating conflict. And they'll tell you, some of the police officers are very happy that they're getting that extra help. Others feel like, these folks are sort of like overstepping. Right. But the community is responding in a way that encourages them to continue to do the work.
Right. And that's really what matters, mm-hmm. is to get the community engaged and supportive. As usual, when we have these conversations, we have run out of time. Thank you so very much, both of you, for engaging with me on these difficult but important topics. I really appreciate it. It's great to see you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with my final thoughts.
Hi, I'm Bianca Cotton. Join me Mondays at 7 p.m. for Behind the Confident Smile as I sit in conversation with incredible, dynamic, and complex Chicagoans who peel back the layers, living lessons, the joy, and the pain behind their confident smiles. You can watch on CanTV 19, CanTV.org, and CanTV Plus app.
Youth violence is rooted in trauma. Our young people have been through COVID-19 and its economic impacts, political polarization, vitriolic and visceral racial discord, and too often they have been directly exposed to violence. When there's a trauma, the output is anxiety, anger, acting out, and low academic performance. If we as adults don't create opportunities and safe places where our young people feel heard and feel they matter, we're going to continue to see the heartbreaking effects of youth-involved violence that threatens the lives and futures of Chicago's next generation of doctors, lawyers, teachers, and community activists. This is an all-hands-on-deck situation. Law enforcement and schools, churches and nonprofits, political and community leaders, we all must come together with a sense of urgency, wrapping our collective arms around Chicago's young people with the intention, care, and respect they need and deserve. We, and that includes members of the media, must do better by our young people before it's too late. Thank you for joining the conversation tonight. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Chicago Newsroom 2.0. Until then, be well and well informed. Good night.